We're starting in a few seconds. Ready? Our next session is on Chronicles of Time, the future of life expectancy. This session will be chaired by Ms. Rajeshwarie VS, who's Vice President Swiss Re India, and she'll be joined by Ms. Sunayana Mahansaria, Head of Life and Health Client Markets, Swiss Re India. Ladies, over to you. Yes, a round of applause is encouraging.
Good afternoon, and hope everybody had a good tea and a short break. So we have here with me my colleague Sunayana. She is the head of Life and Health Client Markets in Swiss Re Mumbai. Sunayana is a fellow actuary and also secretary to the advisory board on life insurance of the IAI, and she is also an alumnus of the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. Today she's going to be talking to us about life expectancy, and in her presentation she's going to cover various aspects such as medical, socio-economic and lifestyle factors that have an impact on life expectancy. So without holding her further, I'll hand over to Sunayana.
Thank you, Rajeshwarie, for a very nice introduction. So I'm glad that the session is only 30 minutes, and we're also running late because I'm someone who speaks a little less. The topic is future of life expectancy. And when we are talking about predicting the future of life expectancy, we are thinking long term. So we are thinking like 20 years ahead. We're going to cover this in three broad parts. So first, we look at what are the kind of developments and setbacks which have impacted human life expectancy in the last century or so. We'll also touch upon how can we predict mortality improvements, or how can we estimate them more accurately. Then we're going to talk about what are the current medical advancements and technologies which can have a significant bearing on our life expectancy right now. And finally, we'll wrap it up by looking at some of the emerging trends which can impact us in the coming 20, 30, 40, 50 years and beyond. But let's get you warmed up first, and let me know what you think about this topic. So have a few polling questions for you. Larry, just a quick show of hands. How many of you have the GCA app and can access the polling questions? Just a quick show of hands. Otherwise, we'll do it manually. Oh, okay, that's about 50. The web app will work. Larry, can you flash the QR code once? Yeah. So just have a quick scan of this. If you already have the app and you're able to, put in questions, etc. on the app, you don't need to go through this. So, Larry, let's put up the first question on the app. Okay. So, can you see this poll question on your app? How many of you are able to see this question on your app? Quick show of hands. Okay, that's very few. So, instead, what we'll do is let's just do it manually. Though we are in the midst of a lot of AI and technological presentations, let's drop the technology for a bit. Just let's do a quick show of hands. So over the past 100 years, what do you think has had the greatest impact on mortality rates? How many of you think it's vaccines? Okay. How many of you think it's antibiotics? Great. Smoking. So it could be a positive or a negative impact, right? But magnitude of impact. So we are kind of roughly divided between number 2 and number 3. World wars, sanitation, very important topic for India. Okay, great. Pandemics and technology. So I think we saw the largest row of hands for antibiotics and smoking and also sanitation. Okay, let's go to the next one. Is politics and government helpful in driving mortality improvements? Yes. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And no? Sometimes. I will not read out the last option. What percentage of people do you think are overweight or obese in India today? Just because we're doing this manually, so less than 20%, very few. Between 20 to 30%, that's a lot of you, and more than 30%, that's also a lot of you. Okay. I'm not going to give you the answers now, but we're going to cover all of these in the content. How do you view the long-term mortality assumption? Would you say it's just a guesswork or just an assumption? So clubbing the first two options together. Statistically based number / actuaries predicting the future. Yeah, thank you. And the last, okay, there's someone for the last option. Okay, crystal ball. Great. What do you foresee as the top driver of mortality improvements in the next 20 years? So 20 years, okay? How do we club these? Okay. Advances in aging, AI. Oh, hardly anyone thinks it's AI, and we just had so many AI presentations. Cancer improvements. Yeah. CVD disease improvements. So roughly split between cancer and CVD. Healthier lifestyle behaviors. Oh, that's almost all of you. Precision medicine. And we'll delve a bit deeper into what is precision medicine going ahead. I'm clubbing the last two, self-driving cars and technological advances. Okay, so a lot of you think it could be cancer improvements, CVD, and healthier lifestyle behaviors. Okay, thanks, and hope you're all warmed up for the session ahead. So let's start with looking at what has really impacted life expectancy in the last century or so. In the top half of the slide, and the people behind, in case you are having trouble seeing what's written on the slide, please feel free to come forward. A lot of the slides, they're around 12 slides, and a lot of them have pictures and graphs like these, so you may be able to see it more clearly if you sit ahead. So the top half of the slide is showing you the medical advancements and other advancements which have impacted life expectancy. And the size of the circle, the size of the pink circles, are a relative estimate of the magnitude of impact it has had. So clearly what you can see is 4 big circles on top. The invention of penicillin. It was an antibiotic discovered in around 1940s. The invention of chemotherapy, cancer treatment. Smoking also reduced significantly, particularly in advanced markets, particularly driven by a lot of public health, government-led initiatives to reduce the smoking trends. And statins. Quick show of hands. Anyone who knows what is a statin? Yeah. So any one of you would like to say what it is? Yeah, so very closely linked. He said blood thinners. So they are used to lower the lipids. They are used to cure CVD or cardiovascular diseases. So with some of these inventions plus many others, human life expectancy has made great strides in the last century or so. In the middle of the slide, you can see the generations which are benefiting from these impacts. So on the left side, you see silent generation, baby boomers generation. These are generations who are now in their about 60s or so. They are benefiting from a lot of these advancements now in their older ages. Towards the right, on the other extreme, you see Generation Alpha, the children, the babies of today. They are getting all of these advancements handed to them on a plate. They are living in a very well-connected world, but they also have risks to contend with. In particular, increase of sedentary lifestyles, work from home, leading to less exercise, lifestyle-related issues, rising obesity, but also climate change, also the high risk of infectious diseases. These are the kind of risks which these kids will have to contend with. Moving on. Let's touch upon what it takes to estimate long-term mortality improvements. And this needs to be, this is such an important assumption. So on the graph, you can see the probability of dying within the next 1 year for a 45-year-old UK male. That part is just for reference, but it's basically the probability of dying within the next 1 year. And if the mortality improvement changes by about 2%, that probability, you can see it doubles, almost triples, depending upon the age at which you see it. All right, so when actuaries try to estimate mortality improvements, generally you would look at, for anything, actuaries look at past data and try to predict what's going to happen in future. Particularly for something like mortality improvements, it's not sufficient just to look at the past data. You also need to estimate what kind of new trends and advances are going to take place in the next 20, 30 years. So it has to be a combination of empirical analysis and also forward-looking judgment. And insured lives, so just a note on insured lives, they have exhibited higher mortality improvements as compared to the general population. When it comes to mortality improvements, you can expect that the rate of mortality improvements that insured population will see as a consequence of medical advancements will be roughly similar across different countries, even though the base mortality or the underlying mortality rates may be different in different countries. So some of the considerations which come to mind when we're talking about human life expectancy. So it's interesting to note that mortality improvements have been cyclical in nature. So there have been a rapid acceleration of mortality improvements, period of rapid improvement in mortality rates, followed by a plateauing or a slowing down of mortality improvements, again followed by a wave of rapidly improving mortality rates. And this cyclical pattern has been noticed in different countries, though it could be taking place at different times as well. Also, the mortality improvements tend to be different across different socioeconomic profiles of the population. In particular, in the US, we have seen that a higher socioeconomic, the life expectancy for higher socioeconomic profiles and that for the lower socioeconomic profiles have been continuously diverging for the last several years, and that is leading to some concern for the diverging rate of health and death rates. But it is noticeable across various countries, this trend. And we will go into much more detail now on the medical and lifestyle factors which impact. But it's interesting to note that some of these factors impact different generations at the same time. For example, obesity, which is increasing steadily, that impacts multiple generations at the same time. But something like new cancer treatments, they would impact certain older generations faster, or new vaccines against COVID, for example. The older generations were prioritized. But then again, when it comes to things like using AI to assess which younger people are susceptible to a certain infection or a disease, such type of advancements could impact the younger generations before they impact the older generations. So different advancements impact different generations at different time points. So quick note on India. In context of what we just saw on the previous slide, you can see the life expectancy increasing steadily on the left side. In the middle, you can see also the cyclical nature of mortality improvements. On the right, you can see the differences between the mortality for higher and lower socioeconomic profiles. In advanced markets, the life expectancy has seen to be better as compared to the developing markets. So in the graph on the right, you can see on top, you have the continents like America and Europe. And below that, you have the continents such as Asia and Africa. And it's interesting to note that even within the advanced markets, there are significant differences. So when you talk about US and UK, so here on the graph, you can see Switzerland and Japan on top, US and UK lower. All of them are seeing increasing life expectancy, but countries like US and UK, you can see towards the right, the mortality improvements have been plateauing. The life expectancy is also plateauing. And that some of the actuaries predict, or some of the demographers predict, could also be due to the lifestyle factors. On the other hand, for Japan and Switzerland, you see even now a continuously improving life expectancy. So let's talk for a minute about these longevity champions. Japan as a country used to have very high degree of cerebrovascular related deaths and stomach cancer related deaths during the 1960s. And the government took a lot of initiatives to improve public health awareness around diets. Also, better cancer treatments were invented around that time period, and that led to a turnaround in Japan's mortality story. And today, the demographers use the centenarians. Centenarian means people who live beyond the age of 100. So demographers use the centenarians in Japan as a benchmark to set where the omega, or the highest human life age, should be. In Switzerland, on the other hand, that is a country which has an expensive but very well-funded healthcare system with access to a broad range of specialists to treat multiple types of diseases. And also as a culture, they have a very strong culture of outdoor activities, very low levels of obesity. So that has also helped Switzerland achieve very high life expectancy. Now let's talk about some of the medical advancements which are impacting us even as we speak. And hopefully, we expect these to have significant positive impact on life expectancy in the next 20 plus years. So let's spend a minute on cancer. You all felt cancer, CVD, all of these are going to be very important to determine how life expectancy moves forward. So in terms of cancer, the current treatments such as chemotherapy, unfortunately, they also target a lot of the healthy cells along with the cancerous unhealthy cells. But new treatments are being developed. Two of these are called mRNA vaccines and CAR T therapies. Basically, what these do is they look at what are the gene mutations which are specifically causing cancer. And once that is being identified through a biopsy, the drugs are being targeted specifically at those genes which are causing at those gene mutations which are causing cancer in the body. So the benefit of such treatments is that they attack the unhealthy cells only without attacking the healthy cells. There is a difference between these therapies. So primarily, the mRNA is directly administered into the body, whereas in case of CAR T, the immune cells are extracted, the treatment is administered, and then they are re-injected in the body. But unfortunately, to date, none of the mRNA vaccines are yet approved. But there is some hope, because during COVID also such types of vaccines were developed. There is some hope that even for cancer, these will become more commonplace. What are liquid biopsies? So currently, in a typical solid biopsy, the cells are extracted from a particular place in the body. That does not give you a complete tumor profile. In a case of liquid biopsy, the cancer biomarkers present in the blood are used to identify and the magnitude and type of cancer. So these are found to give a more complete tumor profile. Again, these are very, very new inventions, so the specificity and the sensitivity of such treatments are low, but there is hope that with that improving, it becomes a lot more accurate in terms of predicting the kind of cancer and the severity, and appropriate treatments are administered. And finally, coming to AI. AI is capable of going through vast swaths of medical literature and actually being able to pinpoint or predict what kind of profiles are going to be most susceptible to get cancer or possibly for a relapse of cancer. So such kind of inventions we hope will be very beneficial. On the other hand, cardiovascular diseases, a lot of the medical advancements have taken place to a large extent. So the invention of statins has been very effective. You can see in the graph on the right, the CVD disease rates have been steadily dropping. That's in India. That's also the case across various countries. And now it is felt that it is up to a lot of the lifestyle-related aspects which can bring this risk down further. CVD and cancer put together cause more than 50% of the deaths. So a lot of the CVD prevention is also now in our own hands, and particularly given that a lot of the public screening programs carried out by governments are focused more on cancer, more needs to be done by individuals themselves to reduce the risk factors. The third and the last one which we look at in detail is neurodegenerative disorders, primarily Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, motor neuron disease. In fact, Alzheimer's is found to be one of the key causes for dementia, but dementia itself, as you can see in the graph on the right, 40% of the causes of dementia are found to be modifiable factors. You can do something about them, lifestyle-related, education-related, etc. 60% of the risks is still unknown. Now, what I want to highlight here is the current medications for neurodegenerative disorders target the symptoms. They are used to manage the illness, but they don't really target the root cause of the illness itself. So with time and with more advancements, once you have medication targeting the root cause, it can bring the mortality owing to these diseases down further. There have been certain drugs which have been brought out which have shown an ability to partially reverse the onset of these diseases, but they have, some of them have found to have very serious side effects and have also been withdrawn from the market. A quick minute on some of the lifestyle factors. Also, a lot of you acknowledge that is very important for life expectancy. Quick show of hands again. Are you aware of metabolic health? Heard of it, right? So we'll spend a half minute on metabolic health. We always talk about the illness, cancer, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, obesity, etc., etc. A lot of these actually have a common root cause, which is insulin resistance. A presence of strong insulin resistance leads to poor metabolic health. And insulin is basically that component in the body which enables the cells to convert sugar into energy. So if you are insulin resistant, your body is not able to convert sugar into energy. That sugar is building up in the blood and then leading to the issues like diabetes, obesity, cancer, CVD, and a host of other illnesses. Again, metabolic health can be achieved a lot through lifestyle management, and many of you would have seen some of your friends, they wear those patches also on their body now to regulate the sugar levels in the blood. So metabolic health is an increasingly popular and important concept. Last 2 minutes, thanks. We will skip some of this due to paucity of time. But just to, I want to touch upon obesity because it's making headlines. Some of the obesity drugs are making headlines. You may have heard of Ozempic. So that obesity is now being handled in different ways. It is a growing epidemic. It's a growing cause of concern. Many of the drugs which were used to be treated diabetes too are now actually being used for weight management and to bring down obesity. They found to be effective as well, but there is a concern when people stop taking the drug or when they stop the medication, what happens? And finally, bariatric surgeries are also being increasingly used as a last resort, and they have been found to be very effective as well, particularly because in majority of patients, the weight loss continues even after several months after the surgery. I'll skip this, but you can just take note that obesity in India is at about 20 to 30%, as many of you thought it is. And finally, on the emerging risks, antimicrobial resistance, that is a very important risk, particularly for India. That's basically because of excessive use of antibiotics that the germs and the viruses become very resistant to the medications used to treat them. And that decreases the effectiveness of drugs in treating very serious diseases as well. During COVID, antibiotics were prescribed to a too large an extent in India, and the Health Ministry has reported more than 4 times increase in antimicrobial resistance cases in India during 2017 to 2022, which was the COVID period. Similarly, climate change is also an increasing risk for us today. And with the increasing mobilization, you can go across continents within half a day. The risk of infectious diseases spreading quickly is also increasing. Finally, I will sum it up. You can see a lot of the aspects we spoke about on this slide, future medical advancements, but of course, there's a lot of timelines involved, there's a lot of technological progress involved here, but we have made a lot of advancement in the past, and we are going to similarly make a lot of advancement in the future. There are probably going to be long waiting times, but we have come a long way, and many of these can come sooner or later. The size of the circle is broadly proportional to the magnitude of impact as per Swiss Re internal estimates, and the weight should be worth it. But most importantly, a lot of this is also in our own hands. So I'll leave you with that message, and happy to take any questions.
Thanks for that. It's very interesting. The WHO estimate that pollution in India takes 6 years off life expectancy and 12 years in Delhi, which is terrifying. So it feels like that's going to have a very significant impact on, what happens to pollution will have a very material impact on what happens to life expectancy in future. Is that right?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So indeed, air pollution is also a very heightened risk. And it is one risk which is very, very different. Like, we spent some time discussing on that internally. And what we felt is that it can be very different for depending upon the location, also depending on whether, which segment of the population. So it's unfortunate, but it's a sad truth that different socioeconomic profiles are also, exposed to it in different ways. It's also got some linkage to climate change. So all of these aspects, like what we think is the vulnerability of the population versus the insured population, can be very different for a factor like air pollution and even for climate change, but it's definitely a risk nonetheless, and very important risk given that we're talking about the population at large.
So when you show that the timelines today to mid-century, organ replacement, Alzheimer's, dementia drugs, does this also take into account the accessibility of such treatments and such advanced care methodologies to all sections of the society? Because, say for example, robotic surgery, that may be accessible to say only 0.01% of the population, which may not translate into mortality improvements for the insured population as a whole. So does this timeline take into account for the accessibility also, or is it just the development of this new treatments?
Correct. That's a very good question, Ashish. So thanks for raising that. Yes, of course. The accessibility is a very, very important factor to determine how beneficial it can be. But since we are talking about the impact it can have on life expectancy, so yes, we are very much taking the accessibility into consideration, and we are showing the timeline and the impact also in such a way which is an estimate of by when this can be broadly accessed by a broad range of the population. Okay, last question.
I think the question is quite similar to what he asked. That you mentioned that base mortality would remain same across geography, would be different across regions, but future mortality improvement would still be same across regions. So is that again related to accessibility only? Because, for example, if we consider India itself as a region, the future improvements in mortality would be different even in different regions. So why would we say that it is same across multiple countries as well?
Sure, I'll try to answer your query here, and this can get a bit confusing at times, so also happy to continue the discussion offline, but let me first try to answer this now. So, see, essentially what we're talking about is the life expectancy and the mortality improvements are different. The base rates are different by different geographies and also by different population, whether general versus insured population. So let's once keep aside the different socioeconomic profiles which can add a further dimension to this, right? But between general and insured population, roughly we expect these advancements to have a similar impact on the mortality improvements for the insured population in terms of the improvement. But the base mortality rates will continue to be different depending upon the country and the other factors that go into it. Happy to discuss more offline. So since we're out of time, I think I saw one or two more hands raised, but you can catch me after the session. Thank you for being a great audience.
Thank you, Sunayana, for this lovely session. Please stay with us for a second. I'd like to request Ms. Piyuli Das to kindly present mementos to our speakers. Ms. Piyuli Das, please. Thank you so much. I think we all really